this is Rob from SGNR Photo, and welcome to Thoughts from My Car. This is something of an experimental podcast idea I had while, oddly enough, driving to and from work. I do quite a bit of commuting during a typical workday. Right now I live about an hour from where I work. And so I have a lot of time to sit in my car with my own thoughts, think about things that I want to put up on the website, things I'd like to write about, and just general thoughts overall. And of course, when you spend that much time in your car, you don't really have the chance to sit down, write them down, take note of them, pull out a laptop and, whip up a post. And I didn't want these ideas to be lost. So here I am in my car, driving to work, and just sort of thinking out loud about various topics. Most of it will be photography related or related to the website in some way, or projects that I'm either in the midst of, or upcoming projects, or just general things that I'd either really like to try someday, or things that I'd really like to avoid like the plague someday, or every day, because I think they're horrible. I have no idea how this is going to turn out. I have no idea how this is going to sound. So let's just jump right into it. So moving right along, and continuing with the theme of experimentation, I recently came across a link on Facebook to an article that was in People magazine, or at least the online version of People magazine, about a journalist from the United States named Esther Honig. It might be pronounced Honig. I'm not entirely certain on the pronunciation of her name, so until I see any kind of video or audio footage that gives me the correct pronunciation, I'm going to go with Honig. And what she did as an experiment was to take a photo of herself, a very simple headshot photo, in either no makeup or very minimal makeup, in front of a plain medium gray background, and she sent it to various Photoshop artists around the world with one simple request: can you make me look beautiful? Now, it needs to be said from the outset that this young lady, she's in her mid-20s, she's not an entirely unattractive woman to begin with. She is, by all, at least by my own personal judgment, she's a good-looking girl. So, I'm not sure what I understand where this was going, but it's not like they were taking, someone who looked like the Hunchback of Notre Dame and turning them into Cindy Crawford. There was some good material to start with, so to speak. And I'm going to get off this topic before I dig myself even further into a hole. So what she did, getting back on topic, was she sent off this photo requesting that these Photoshop artists make her look beautiful. And of course, these artists are in different countries, different cultures, different standards of beauty. And I put those in air quotes. And if you can imagine me, normally with the air quotes, you're using your first two fingers. Imagine me using all of my fingers plus my thumbs, because I can't put enough air quotes around the words beauty standards, which I'll get to in a moment. But the idea is in all of these different cultures with these different beauty standards is what would the results be? What would the images look like that she got back? And how would you compare an image that came back from, say, Japan with an image that came back from Argentina or Russia? It's an interesting idea. It's a great little experiment. Here's my problem. If you look up this photo project, and you can easily do this if you look up Esther Honig, Honig, through the magic of Google, and bring up any of the various articles about this project and the interviews that she's done in the meantime since this is published, I want to say about 2 weeks ago. These images are, to put it as mildly as I can, these images are very uneven in terms of the results. These are clearly not all retouched by professional digital artists. There are a lot of images from this photo project where the message that I get from it is not, oh wow, there's a whole lot of different beauty standards around the world based on culture, based on geographic location. What I get is there are a lot of people worldwide who should not ever own a version of Photoshop. They should be kept away from Photoshop, possibly with a mandate from the court. A court order, a restraining order from Adobe, preventing these people from ever having Photoshop installed on their computers, because some of these images are terrible. Some of these images, the compositing is laughably bad. One of the images looks like, those wooden cutouts that you get at like fairs or these like theme park attractions where you just sort of stick your face through this wall, and when someone takes your picture, it looks like you're the face of a horse or you're the head of a duck. That's how bad some of these images look. Some of the images are just really, really terrible. People just have no sense of when to stop. And you can tell that most of the people that took up this challenge are very amateur. And to me, that takes away the entire point of this type of experiment. This experiment would be more valid if she had sent this image off to the art department of major magazines in these countries. So, for example, you have different versions of Vogue, you have different versions of GQ magazine. If it had been done, sent these off to major women's magazines, where the professional retouchers that work for these magazines could have worked on these images and sent back what could actually be published in a magazine that someone can pick up at a newsstand in these countries and view. This would be more valid to show what are the cultural beauty standards, or the beauty standards being pushed at a particular country or culture. The way it looks now is, it looks like somebody put up an open cast on Craigslist to say, hey, anybody want to edit my photo? Because the results look like a lot of people who know some of the tools of Photoshop. They know what the tools do, but they haven't quite learned how to use them in the proper way that works in terms of aesthetics. And if you see this project, you'll understand what I mean. There are a few that are very, very nice images. There are a few images that are very beautifully retouched that look like they could actually be published in a major magazine in some country, possibly even within North America. But many of these images look like someone who's had a little bit too much fun with their Photoshop filters, that haven't quite learned how to restrain themselves. And I'm going to admit, I've been as guilty of this as anyone else. When I first got back into digital photography, my processing was not the best. My level of restraint was not very good. You have to learn. It's a skill you have to learn. You have to learn that there is too much of, you can have too much processing to an image. Once people's skin tone starts to take on the look of wax fruit, maybe you've gone a little bit too far. And you got to pull back the reins a little and say, no, this person still deserves to look human. You need to make your people look like real people. And a lot of these people in this particular project haven't learned that yet. Now, to contrast against that particular experiment of beauty standards worldwide for women, I came across another link that contrasted male beauty standards. And the whole point of this was to take a series of male model photos. In this case, it was designer underwear ads, Calvin Klein, etc. Take those professional ads with their professional models and have regular, everyday, ordinary guys you meet at work, guys you see on the street, and have them pose in exactly the same garments or undergarments, in exactly the same poses, exactly same lighting conditions and studio conditions, and place them side by side. I believe that this was run in a British tabloid called The Sun, and I know that just the mere mention of this is going to make at least one person who may listen to this absolutely shit the bed. So I'm kind of having a smile when I think about that, of the reaction that that's going to elicit. I'm probably going to hear about it on one of his podcasts. I hope I do. I'd like to hear him take the piss out of me just for doing it, because I knew it would annoy him. But I digress. So this particular article ran in The Sun in Britain, and was not really played up as a gag. I hope it wasn't. It would be nice if it wasn't. But it just showed what is the difference when you take a regular, ordinary guy off the street, put him in the same conditions and under the same type of lighting and photo environment as you take these male models. You pose them in the same way, put them in the same garments, and put these images out. What's your preference, sort of a thing. Sort of a poll, the man on the street or lady on the street. And what do you think? And the results of that article are not as interesting as how that article was shared. When doing my minimal amount of research, by which I mean just sort of looking through Google hits and Google search results, when looking up these two varying articles, because I'd already found the articles, I had them open, but I wanted to know what the popularity of these two varying things were. When I looked at the article from The Sun, which admittedly was published back in 2013, almost one full year ago, the shares and reblogs of this, it was reblogged on sites like Bored Panda, Huffington Post, 9gag, places you go to get sort of alternative news sites, and I use news again with about 20 or 30 air quotes around each. But basically online reblog sites is where you can find, archives or reposts of this particular project. When I looked up the photo project from Esther Honig, with the women's beauty standards, it was a lot different. The search results I got were a lot different. Well, you still got them on sites like Bored Panda and 9gag and Huffington Post, but you also got Elle Magazine, People Magazine. Mainstream media magazines picked up on this story, at least in their online versions, and ran with this, and are keeping it current. And actually, in Elle Magazine, at least the online version, there's a follow-up interview. There's the original article with the photos that talks about the photo project, and then a follow-up interview with the journalist herself, where she talks about the project. I don't recall seeing any search results for how the male beauty standard was followed up on. I don't see any follow-up on this. It just looks like it ran in the sun. It was good for the lulz, and it just kind of died on the vine. And I found that very interesting. I found it very, very interesting that there was almost an apathy toward how men are being marketed to in terms of, this is the standard we would like you to hold, versus the standards of beauty that are very aggressively pushed on women. Now, maybe it's the level of aggression in the push that is the difference. I don't know. I come from this from a point of view of, I know that, Playgirl magazine is not going to be knocking on my door begging me to sign a release to be in their magazine. I know Calvin Klein is not on the phone when my phone rings asking me to come down to the studio to try on a pair of their tighty-whities. I get it. I know that. I'm comfortable with that. I'm fine with that. And I'm not sure if it's apathy. I'm not sure if it's comfort in my own skin, self-confidence. But it's caused me to stop and think for a moment. Why is it that even though both genders are being told that the standard of beauty for their particular gender is kind of ridiculous? And let's face it, male models are insanely beautiful people, and I can say that. They pick out these insanely beautiful people to be in their magazines. I don't think they're born so much as manufactured. I think there's a secret factory somewhere that makes these people and puts them together from bins of parts. Because they don't look like people you ever meet in your life. You don't walk down the street and just meet up with one of these incredibly, GQ models. It just defies belief. But at the same time, there doesn't seem to be that sort of attention called to the fact that these people are ridiculously beautiful. And I'm not trying to take away at all, and I want to make this very, very clear, I'm not trying to take away at all from the fact that women are basically being marketed to in a way that teaches them to hate themselves pretty much from the day they're able to read. From the day that they're able to pick up a magazine, look at a picture, read the text, and assimilate the information that until you look like this image, you are not a complete person, which I firmly believe is the message that a lot of these magazine editors and whatnot are trying to push, in spite of their recent spankings in the media about over photoshopping people and celebrities calling them out on it. I just find it interesting that there's that inequality again, that even though both genders are getting kind of royally hosed in terms of what they're trying to, what they're being told they should aspire to, that it's not sort of reported about in equal measure. It's a curiosity. I don't want anyone to think of this as a complaint. It's a curiosity. It's an interesting social experiment, I guess you could say. If anyone has any theories on this, hey, I'm all ears. Do feel free to message me, send me a tweet at SGNR Photo, post a comment on the Facebook page, throw a comment up on my website, sgnr.photo, or even send me an email, inbox@sgnr.photo. This is something I wouldn't mind opening up a debate on this. It might be interesting to see what everyone thinks. And that pretty much wraps it up for the experimental episode of Thoughts from My Car. I'm rapidly approaching work right now, so I will need to bring this to a conclusion. I do thank you for your experimenting in listening this far. And if it comes out, even halfway decent, or maybe not even decent. Decent's not the great word. If it's even remotely interesting, if it turns out to be an interesting experiment that's maybe worth repeating, I do plan on repeating it. And if you intend to repeat the experiment to see where it goes, to see what results lie ahead, hey, I thank you for it. I thank you for your interest. Again, feedback is always great. It's always nice to know that what I'm doing is not just sort of shouting out into the void or pissing into the wind. It's nice to know that people are out there listening. So please do leave comments, even if it's just to say, hey, listen to it, cool. Or, a like or something on Facebook, just to know that people are out there, people are actually listening. It'd be great. Again, I can be found on Twitter at SGNRPhoto. I also have the Facebook fan page, facebook.com/SGNRPhoto, all is one word. Or you can email me, inbox at sgnr.photo. So, as I wind down this experiment, I do want to take one little moment to talk about sort of things on the horizon, kind of the topic I've completely avoided from the beginning. There are a couple of things that are upcoming for those of you who are interested in it, made it this far. One of the things that I will be doing, and I'm aiming for August the 1st, in terms of new and interesting things, is I'm planning on launching an Indiegogo campaign to raise some funds to basically put together a little bit of a video production setup. I've recently acquired some lighting gear, which will go a long way in helping me to up the production value of videos. I'm looking to put together a little bit of audio gear to properly record myself so I can be more than just a disembodied voice who speaks into his USB headset over the top of a screen capture of me editing photos, because I think you guys and gals out there deserve a little bit more entertainment with your video content. Not to say that I think the videos so far have been bad, but I'd like to make them more interesting for everybody. I'd also like to appear in some of them. I've actually had a few people ask me, well, when are you going to be in your own videos? Well, part of it is, it's right now it's not the video aspect. I have, enough high-definition video equipment. I can just use my cell phone, for example, to record high-definition video. The problem is always audio. If you have really bad audio, and the irony of me saying this while recording a podcast in my own vehicle amuses me slightly. But if you have bad audio with video, it's worse than having bad video. A good quality sound source will always bring your production value up and be a little bit more professional, or at least come off as more professional. And I'd like to give you guys some good content. So the Indiegogo campaign is to basically put some funds together to set myself up with, maybe an A cam or a B cam, a little bit of audio equipment, something that is portable, can be taken on the road, taken to photo shoots, something that I can bring you along on photo shoots that I do, show you some more behind the scenes stuff, not just from the editing room, but also on location, doing shoots, etc. And by extension, by putting all that together, is I'll be able to do more diverse video projects. One of the things that I have in the works that are in the very early stages is a little bit of a documentary type of feature. I'm not going to give out any details about it now because it's in the very, very early stages of everything. It's not put together enough to the point where I can really talk about it and have it make sense. But it is something that is lurking on the horizon that I'd like to put together. And of course, if the campaign is successful, that will go a long way to making that a reality. So, this one completely winds down today's program. I thank you for indulging me for as long as you have. I hope I haven't bored you. At least if I haven't completely thoroughly entertained or blown your mind, that I didn't put you to sleep. If anyone's using this as a cure for insomnia, well, I guess at least it went to good use. But I do hope that when Thoughts from My Car number 2 comes around, that you're still with me. Thanks for listening. So it would appear that the theme of today's podcast is experimentation. I am experimenting with creating a new podcast. And in fact, I think I can go on record as being the only photography podcast that's willing to admit that it was recorded inside of a moving vehicle instead of just sounding like it. And all of you are experimenting with actually listening to this podcast. I hope those go well. I hope this actually turns out to be somewhat interesting as an experiment. I'd like to be able to do this on a somewhat regular basis and know that people are actually enjoying this sort of thing. And in keeping with the topic of experimentation, I recently caught an experimental film called Escape from Tomorrow. Now, don't worry, I'm not trading in photography for becoming a movie critic. It was actually recommended to me from someone I know, mostly because it was actually shot entirely on digital SLR cameras, which are a lot like the ones that I use for my still photos. Pretty much any modern DSLR now comes equipped with a movie mode, and some of the better cameras let you adjust the frame rate and the video quality in such a way that it can pretty accurately mimic film, the way film looks when you shoot a movie. So it's been, a big benefit to independent movie makers, and especially in this case, because the film was shot almost in its entirety at Disneyland and Walt Disney World, clearly without the permission of the Disney Corporation. So having a camera that made, the filmmakers look like tourists while they dressed up like tourists and not, like a bunch of indie filmmakers making an indie film, was obviously very beneficial. So, I guess a plot summary, if you can call it such a thing, of Escape from Tomorrow is family goes on vacation. On the last day of vacation, the father learns that he is no longer employed. And so he tries to hide this fact from his family while they try to enjoy the last day of their vacation. And throughout the course of the day, the stresses of what to do next and trying to put on that happy face for the family sort of drives the father over the edge. And there's a little bit of a descent into madness theme. And we find out through the eyes of the father figure that things are not all as they seem at the happiest place on earth. That would be about as generous as I can be in calling that a plot. This movie is very juvenile, very incoherent, and quite frankly, really stupid. It just is. It's just really, really stupid. It's not a good movie. And I'll explain why. Or at least why I think it's a stupid movie. And the first thing is that if you think about the story and the setup of the story for anything longer than 5 minutes, nothing makes sense. The company you work for will not call you while you're on vacation to fire you over the phone. It just doesn't happen that way. I've been fired from jobs before. Doesn't work that way. That to me just sounds like a gigantic lawsuit for wrongful dismissal in the works. And again, and then which brings me to the next point, is who actually answers a phone call from their place of employment while they're on vacation at Disney World or Disneyland? That doesn't make sense. So right away, the setup of the movie within the first couple of minutes, the whole movie doesn't make sense. It just falls apart right there under its own lack of logic. But I'll turn my brain off and I'll ignore that for a second, because this film has worse problems going for it. And the biggest one, as far as the overarching narrative of the father and his descent into madness, is that everything takes place way too quickly. No one comes apart that quickly if they are a reasonably well-adjusted person from something like, job loss. I have very recently gone through the experience of job loss. Layoffs happen, downsizing happens. It's the nature of business. It doesn't tend to break you down into this quivering piece of jelly. People are a little tougher than that, for the most part. And by all accounts, the father figure appears to be a relatively well-adjusted person. Honest, decent, hardworking family man. Doesn't seem to be especially fragile to the point where a bit of bad news, even if it's on his family vacation, would tend to get to him. Now, if I were to rewrite this story, and I don't know why I would, but I'm going to pretend that I can make this a better film. Because, hey, why not? I would have the father lose the job right before leaving on vacation. Have the father just about ready to leave the office, going on his big vacation that they've planned for a year. The kids are looking forward to it. It's the big dream vacation that, that he and his wife have been looking forward to since they've been married, because they've been saving their pennies and they haven't, they've never really been able to do something for themselves. They finally get a chance. And he's called into the boss's office and he's let go. Now you have some dramatic tension to build on, because now the family man has to keep it together for the duration of a vacation. He has to start at the beginning of the vacation knowing that every penny that they spend is money that's really not coming in anymore. It's money they really probably can't afford to spend. And of course, if you take a vacation at a economical destination such as Walt Disney World with young children, you're obviously not going to spend any money whatsoever on things like souvenirs or overpriced meals or what have you. When you go on big vacations, you spend money. I remember going on a very quick long weekend vacation, driving to Halifax with the family, and we probably spent about 10 to 15%, maybe 20% over our budget, which we probably knew ahead of time we were going to do anyway. So I can only imagine what it would be like going to a place like Walt Disney World, where you have all these places where you can experience something if you've got the cash in your pocket, and bring a piece of that experience home with you in the form of souvenirs. So you would have the tension of, one, the loss of the job and hiding it from the family; two, the mounting unease over the budgeting of everything and the spending of the money, while all the while trying to hide the reason why you're trying to be so thrifty from the family. And over the course of the week or the weekend or however long this vacation is, there's time for this to happen. There's time for this person to slowly start to crack and come apart to where they end up. And if you've seen the trailer, this isn't really a spoiler. And quite frankly, this movie I think came out last year, and it's not really good enough to worry about spoilers anyway. But the father figure begins to hallucinate. He begins to have visions on, the rides at Disney World, that there are demonic creatures or faces within the rides. Even the faces of people that he sees in front of him start to take on this demonic kind of possessed look. And over the course of the movie, get a little more bizarre in terms of what type of imagery comes to mind. At one point, he finds out that the princesses that work at Walt Disney World are actually there to serve as high-end call girls or hookers for wealthy foreign tourists. And you wonder why Disney wouldn't allow them to film such a wonderful, heartwarming message on their property, but I digress. So that's one element that really bothers me, is the pacing of it is all wrong. You can't really take a descent into madness if you don't know where the baseline is. You don't know where this guy started from, because you don't really ever get to meet a character. Everything and everybody is written as very flat, very two-dimensional, very stereotypical. You can already see from the moment go that the wife character is going to be the stereotypical nagging wife. The children are going to be the bratty children, or they're going to take the duo, the dynamic duo of the bratty child and the child that always gets sick at the most inopportune moment. They'll play those tropes out over the course of the film, and really no one grows. There's no change at all. There's no chance for a change. It's too compressed a time frame. The only character that actually has the change is the father character, and for him it's just, okay, well, he starts off getting bad news and ends up going insane and dying by choking on a hairball. Don't ask me to explain it. I've seen the movie twice and I can't even figure it out. But yeah, it's just a bit of a sprawling mess in terms of the pacing of the story. The next part of it that bothers me is kind of, as the story progresses and the imagery of the hallucinations moves forward, things start off in maybe kind of a horror kind of genre, like maybe a minimalist horror type of thing, or a surreal horror film, and it just turns into a real juvenile type of visual whatever that you get out of this. At one point, he's trapped, the father figure is trapped in a room, and there are all these pictures of naked women all over the walls, and he just, for some reason, he has a tube of Neosporin in his hand, and he starts squeezing on the bottle, and it looks like, like semen shooting out all over the place, and it's like, oh, right, yeah, we get it. It's dumb. But even that's not my main problem. My main problem comes with a secondary plot device whereby the father figure character tries to hold on to a last vestige fantasy element of his big fantasy vacation. And it comes in the form of two younger ladies who catch the eye of the father figure very early in the movie. And throughout the course of the day, this last day of vacation, he coincidentally runs into them, not literally, just sort of ends up in the same place at the same time as them, and looks over them sort of adoringly, maybe a little too much. And through the course of the movie, instead of it becoming coincidental that he keeps meeting up with these two younger women, he starts to orchestrate things in a way that he intentionally ends up in the same place at the same time as them. And that's fine. That idea is fine. It was actually done in National Lampoon's Vacation, with the Christie Brinkley character, the fantasy younger woman who is the sharp relief against the nagging wife character. Okay, been done before, been done better, but I can handle that. What I don't like about it is that the two young ladies that they picked to play these roles look like young teenagers. They don't really look older than 14 or 15, which makes the father figure come off as an incredible pervert. There's too much leering going on for that to work properly. If they wanted to do it with the two, they want to do it with two girls instead of one, to say, well, we're completely different from National Lampoon's Vacation, whereby a family kind of goes through all these weird things while they're going to the happiest place on earth. No, we're not at all like that. See, we have two girls that are the fantasy of the father. Make them at least old enough to vote. Make them old enough to not look like his own children, or could be his own children. It's fucking creepy. It just doesn't work. And again, I bring it back to the writing. They either wrote the characters to be too young, or they casted the characters to be too young, thinking that if they dressed them in a certain way, or had them behave in a certain way, that they would come across on screen as being older. They don't. It just looks bad. So all in all, the whole story could have been something better. It could have been its own take on the disastrous family vacation, and been done rather well if it had been written better. But in terms of how it was executed, it just doesn't add up. On the visual side, because that's what I'm concerned about, it being shot on what are essentially stills cameras that are being co-opted for video use. Some of the shots are quite beautiful. There's the sequence with the fireworks, which is a stunning shot. There's one shot in particular where it's a really low-angle shot of shooting upward at a child who is looking up in the sky in awe and wonder at all these wonderful fireworks going off at Walt Disney World, which you can see in the trailer, or in part in the trailer for this movie. And there are other sequences that are just very beautifully executed. And my problem with that is that all the really beautifully executed shots are also in the trailer. Most of this film that would ever compel you to watch it is in the trailer. It's, got the bizarro elements from the hallucinations, and it's got the magical mysticalness of it all, the beauty shots of Walt Disney World are all in the trailer. So if you've seen the trailer, you've seen the best and most beautiful shots in the entire movie. And fair enough, a lot of movies do that these days. They put their best shots, their best bits in the trailer. They put their best jokes in the trailer. And it just comes off as yet another attempt to try and grab people and see if you can get them to pay attention to a 90-minute movie based on a two minutes of the whiz-bang factor. Like, oh, look how great this movie looks. And then you realize, like, oh, that was every really beautiful shot they actually made in this movie. Because while some of the visual effects used to create the demon faces that are found in the hallucinations of the father are really nice, there is one of the more comically poorly executed green screen shots in recent memory that was obviously filmed on a soundstage. It was, and not even a soundstage. I don't even think it was recorded in a professional studio. I think it was recorded in someone's basement with like a green screen hanging off the wall. It was like duct taped to a back wall, and it was lit with like a shop light. It just looks terrible. When you get to, if you do ever decide to watch this, I hesitate to call it a movie, but if you want to watch this movie and see what it's all about, you'll know this scene when you get to it. I don't have to tell you what's in it. You will see it and you'll go, oh, yeah, that's bad. Even worse is how bad it looks, because the movie is actually shot in black and white. Which starts off by giving everything kind of a surreal edge, because you associate Disney with bright, vivid colors and lots of magic and everything. And now it's all shades of gray. It's all brightly lit shades of gray, but it's all black, white, gray, and already tells you that something's not quite right. Which is a great visual device. It just, it was done for technical reasons, obviously, because being shooting without permission on someone else's private property, you can't really bring in good lighting gear. So you're using whatever light's available, and if you're using low light with these types of cameras, you're going to get a lot of digital, grainy, nasty noise, video noise, like this blocky, blotchy type of look, and you can hide it a lot better in black and white than you can in color. So that was done mostly for technical reasons. It just so happened to work really well as a narrative device. But when you take bad composite imaging on a green screen and then you convert it into black and white, it looks really, really bad. It's so bad, it looks less convincing than the rear projection type of stuff they used to do in the old Three Stooges bits. You know, where they'd be like window washers and you'd see like the building going up and down behind them. It looks less convincing than that. Yeah, I'm not kidding. So, interesting experiment to bring us back to our original topic, but not one I would recommend. I know there's a lot of people out there that like the so bad it's good movies. You know, you think of something like Troll 2 or The Room or Battlefield Earth, you know, where the movies are just so bizarrely inept that they become entertaining as you try to piece everything together. This one just comes across as very lazy. And that it was just trying to ride its gimmick of having been shot at Walt Disney World without permission or permits to rest that's what it's hanging its hat on. And there's not much there. In fact, if it hadn't been for the fact that it was shot at Walt Disney World, I really don't think that this movie would be known by anybody. I don't think anybody really would have paid any attention to it whatsoever. And actually, Walt Disney's not paying attention to it either. I mean the company, not the man. The Walt Disney Corporation is not doing anything for this movie. They're not even trying to sue them to stop them from releasing it. And I don't blame them, because the only thing that will do is bring a whole lot of undue publicity to this film that really doesn't merit it. I think they're doing the world a favor by just letting it die on the vine.